Hi, welcome to this tasting with myself, Arthur Motley of Royal Mile Whiskies, and Anthony Wills of Kilchoman Distillery, who I will introduce soon. Before we do, I'm just going to run through a few things, a little bit of housekeeping. I think for you guys, hang on 2 ticks. Sorry, bear with me 1 second. We've got the YouTube feed coming through on the volume, so I'm hearing myself. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, we're sorted. Where was I? Sorry about that. So we are tasting the unpeated first, the Loch Gorm, the Ambirach, and then the small batch. So the small batch, I just wanted to mention that there was a little bit of a snafu at the Kilchoman Distillery, and they bottled up and sent out actually a slightly different configuration of miniatures to what we were expecting. So instead of a Fino sherry cask, which we advertised on royalmilewhiskies.com, you all received a small batch #1 miniature. Now, we're not sure if that's a big problem for lots of people, but perhaps some folk were really looking forward to that Fino sherry cask. And the Kilchoman guys are lovely and wanted everyone to be happy. So just in case you were very unhappy about that, we've got a couple of paths that you can take in terms of to rectify the situation. So either you can get in touch with us at Royal Mile Whiskies with the email address contact@royalmilewhiskies.com, and you can ask for a £4 ink vat per pack refund. So effectively what Kilchoman and I are doing are giving you the small batch miniature free of charge, have that dram on us. Or if you really, really wanted that Kilchoman Fino sherry cask, then the good folk at Kilchoman will bottle up a number of these miniatures and send them over to us. So if you place an order for a bottle of Kilchoman from royalmilewhiskies.com from now effectively, and include the code give me Fino, then there'll be a little gift code, voucher code part on the Royal Mile Whiskies website. If you include that code, give me Fino, then we'll slip in a miniature of the Kilchoman Fino sample. Or it may not have bothered you at all and you're fine as you are, which thank you, that's great. So it is delicious, we'll find that later on. So that was that little thing out of the way. I just want to check a few things from my side. Anthony is waiting in the wings, that's good. And I just wanted to give a very brief overview of Kilchoman Distillery. I didn't want to assume that everyone knows everything about Kilchoman already. We may have a few people who are just discovering it. So a very quick summary of Kilchoman. It was founded in 2005. The first new Islay distillery to be built for over 142 years, I think it was. So big news, and it was a brave business decision as well. We're used to the idea of lots of new distilleries now in Scotland as the industry has done very well. But the industry was coming out of the doldrums, and the project that Anthony and his team had was watched on to see if it would work, if a distillery could be funded, if the market would buy 5 or 6 year old young whiskey. But not only has it survived, it's thrived, and they've expanded with adding malting floors where they malt their own barley. We'll talk about that a lot later on. They've expanded capacity with new washbacks, new stills. And they've even added a very lovely looking but very ill-timed visitor centre, which opened in mid-March, I think. So hopefully we can all go there next year, and I think it will still smell and feel very new because not many people will be going there this year, sadly. So that's Kilchoman. It's a farm distillery. It's independent. It's very closely tied to land around it with their own malting floors. They can produce a field to bottle Islay single malt whiskey, heavily peated, of course, and made by very lovely people. So talking of lovely people, let's add in Anthony. and we can start the tasting proper. Hi, Anthony.
Hi, Albert. Nice to
Great.
see you.
Nice to see you too. You're coming through loud and clear. You joined us after a few early technical hitches, so you got that out of the way. So that's good. How's life on Islay? It must be a quieter May than usual.
Yeah, it's pretty strange really here at the moment. The road's very quiet. There's not a lot of visitors. Well, no visitors really. So yeah, it's pretty unusual for Islay to be this quiet in May in the lead up to the festival, which obviously would have been starting on Saturday. So yeah, it's all a bit strange, but we're getting on with life, and we're quite busy at the distillery, though there's a few of us there. Yeah, we're taking care of things, and hopefully things will turn around, and we'll be stronger for it.
Yeah, you'll be ready, I'm sure. Okay, great. Well, I think there's a few thirsty people out there. So I've already explained the order that we're going to be tasting the dram. So starting with the unpeated, which was the one that really excited me to be able to try. First time I'd tried unpeated Kilchoman, but I suppose we have to put that word in inverted commas slightly, because when you pick it up, there's a fair bit of peat. So yeah, talk us through this one, Anthony.
Yeah, I mean, I think as Arthur alluded to, we're a farm distillery, so we grow some of the barley that we use in the process, and so it's barley to bottle. And this dram you have in front of you, it's 100% Islay, so we call all our releases from our own barley 100% Islay, all from the farm where the distillery is located. And we did do a small batch of unpeated at one point. Now, the 100% Islay range is all lightly peated compared with the majority of what we released, which the other 3 sample bottles you have are all from malt we buy from the commercial maltings here on Islay, owned by Diageo, and that is a much higher peating level at 50 parts per million of phenols. Whereas the 100% Islay, which normally we peat to between 10 and 20 parts, we did a small batch of unpeated, but and I think there is a slight but in this, is because we're quite open about the fact that we don't have 2 low wines and faint receivers for our different batches of malt that we put through. So there's always going to be a little remnant that from the previous run that will be part of what we were trying to be unpeated. But now, as Arthur was alluding to earlier, we put in our own a new floor maltings, a bigger floor maltings. We've doubled the amount that we can produce ourselves from our own barley, and we've also doubled production, putting 2 new stills in, same size, same shape, another mash done, and 6 more fermentation vats, and now we have got a separate low wines and faints receiver, which means that when we run our own barley, we can collect it in a completely separate low wines and faints receiver, into a separate spirit receiver, and then into a warehouse receiver. So although we call this unpeated, as Arthur rightly says, when he knows it, I always know that this is 100% Islay because it's much lighter, it's much fruitier, it's got a much sort of lemon and citrus notes, and a very, very faint whiff of peat at the back of the palate. But I love this dram because I think it showcases Kilchoman in a completely different light to our normal standard releases of Macabea and Sanig, which are our core expressions, and then our other limited releases. And it has this lovely fresh sort of malty character, sort of not farmyardy, but it just has and for something that is now, this is 2011, so it's sort of getting on for sort of 9 years of age. It's getting a little bit of cask maturation, a little bit more to it, but it's still light and floral. It's not sort of a huge amount of cask influence coming through on this. And I think we've taken the strength. This is 56.4%. I think that should be on your sample bottle. And the colour is very light, but this is first fill bourbon, so you're never going to get a really rich colour coming through. And even at that strength, it is incredibly approachable, because actually this is where we've been very fortunate, and set up the distillery to be able to release fairly young single malts. And, obviously we released our first in 2009. It was 3 years of age. It's very difficult to know what the reaction is going to be from consumers and also retailers like Royal Mile and people. And so you start your journey fairly with trepidation. It's massively risky when we started. And fortunately, the tide was turning in terms of people's interest and consumers becoming hugely more appreciative and knowledgeable about single malt. And we were fortunate that people enjoyed what they were trying from us, even at that very, very young age for single malt, because non-aged single malt was only just coming on stream back in 2009, and I think people are starting to explore other single malts. And I think Royal Mile will be able to tell you exactly how the market's gone over the last 15, 20 years and is exploded around the world and in the UK especially, in terms of people experimenting and trying different single malts. So we were fortunate in that respect, because all our single malts that we release still are non-age, although we give a bit more information about the age. So this is 9 years, and single cask to me is the way to drink whiskey. It's just something very special, because you're in charge of how you drink it. And I think you drink this neat because I think you try it neat. You nose it and you swill it around and you taste it neat, and then you might want to add a few drops of water just to open up the bouquet, and it does do that. It's this strength. I think you're fooling yourselves if you think you can taste it really well at that sort of high strength, and even though it's got sort of sweet floral notes, it still needs a bit of water to open it up. And
I've just added that.
And it just allows you to taste behind the alcohol a little bit more.
And the farmy notes really come out, I think, when you add that little bit of water. So just to take you back a little bit in terms of where the peatiness is coming. So you're saying there's residual foreshots and feints from a previous peaty distillation that are left over, and then they're mixed effectively with the wash as it gets distilled at this point, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely right. So there's always going to be a remnant in there from the previous run that will be mixed. So you're never, although we called it unpeated, I was always a bit skeptical about calling it unpeated, and I don't want to confuse people, because I think when you nose this, you do pick up the notes of a little bit of a peat trace in the back of the palate and even on the nose slightly. I think the exciting thing for me is that we'll now be able to run completely unpeated, and we're doing unpeated right now through the still house. And we know that we can call it completely unpeated because we're not mixing it with any feints or low wines. And the spirit receiver in the warehouse is separated from our Port Ellen malt. So we call it unpeated, but it is much more lightly peated than other examples of 100% Islay we've put out on the market. And those who've tried some of our releases of 100% Islay, you will get a little bit more peat and saltiness on the nose and palate than you're getting on this particular example. But at between 10 and 20 parts million fingers, that's relatively lightly peated anyway. So the difference is it's worth having the two glasses in your hand. The 100% Islay 9th edition that we released last September, and maybe this, and to see that any market is different. But to my mind, I can nose all these and go, I can pick out 100% Islay because the light floral notes shine through to me, and they don't have the depth of character that other releases from Port Ellen Malt have. But now that we've got this other still house, and it was a massive investment for us to do it, but I think we took baby steps when we opened the distillery and didn't want to produce too much and not having tested the marketplace. And I think we then had the confidence that we had a good following and that sales are going in the right direction, that we thought, right, well, we don't want to sit back and just sell what we can from what we're producing, 100,000, 200,000 litres. We wanted to increase that. And I think that was buoyed on by the fact my three sons are in the business with me. And, at the end of the day, they're the ones champing the bit to take Kilchoman to the next level. And quite rightly, we decided to double production. So we now can produce close to 500,000 litres.
So we've got a few questions coming through that I'm picking up a selection of loads of questions actually coming through, which is great. Andreas H says, it's really good. Please do a bottling of the unpeated. I couldn't agree more. And please, can we do one for all my whiskies? Good.
Yeah,
next question.
Yeah, but I can say to you, Arthur, if you wanted this cask is available.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. Well, we'll talk about that later on. We'll get you drunk first, and then we'll talk about price. So, in the mouth from DB, I think that might be a friend over in Celadike. In the mouth with water is like custard chewits. Was there such a thing? I wrote custard creams actually, which is my my lockdown biscuit. I've gone through many months supplies of that.
Yeah.
Have a bit of vanilla from the cask, and then I think this farmy element probably coming through from the faints as well. I would think, I don't know, but
I think
it's light and heavy. Yeah, it's light and heavy at the same time. Like the smoke is light, but it's got these great bass notes. Okay, cool. So that's probably the first dram. Are we ready to move on to the second dram? Do you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, we've always done the Loch Gormers. I think this is about the 7th edition, though we now do it in annual releases. Loch Gorm is one of our annual limited releases, and people might ask, why do we carry on doing limited releases? Well, the stock is the issue, and anybody who's been a distiller will know that the trick is to hold on to stock from older age releases and have a balance between what you're releasing at a young age and what you can hold back for future releases. So it's a balancing act, and no one ever gets it right, but we have to be careful about the stock we have and make sure that we look after that for older bottlings. And I was always keen to do a 100% matured Oloroso sherry butts. It was something that Jim Swan, who consulted for me, and I'm sure a lot of people who are listening will know of Jim Swan, who sadly died a few years ago. He was my mentor, my consultant, who really held my hand right the way through the whole process of building the distillery. He looked after all my cask maturation and pointed me in the right direction. And he always said to me that, don't cut corners when it comes to maturation. Make sure you buy the best cask, pay the best price, and then everything else will be looked after. Spirit, character all the way through, but then make sure you fill into the right cask. And I followed that mantra all the way through. We've never cut corners in terms of our cask maturation. And Jim Swan was very adamant that I bought from one distillery in Kentucky, and you'll all know Buffalo Trace Distillery. We've always had fantastic casks from them. And then we do the same with our Oloroso sherry casks from Jose Miguel Martin down in the south of Spain. And again, he supplies a lot of the famous Speyside distilleries with their sherry casks, and I think everybody who's bought casks from him will say that they're absolutely top notch, and we've been fortunate to be able to get casks from him from the day we started. We don't fill as many sherry casks; we fill mainly bourbon, but sherry plays a big role in what we do in terms of our battings for Mackie Bay, our core expression, and then the Sanig obviously is something that we put out as another core expression. But to me, this Loch Gorm, which has some of our older Oloroso sherry casks in the battings from 2006, 2007, 8, and 11 casks in this batting of 15,000 bottles that we released worldwide at the beginning of April. And to my mind, when I look at a sherry cask matured, and especially Islay matured, if you're not careful, you can smother it in sherry and lose some of the characteristics that really Islay's become famous for worldwide, which is those sort of iodine-y, sort of salty notes. And to me, that's important to have that balance. And I think, to me, this has come to the fore. And to my mind, I know that people will argue that they like the 2019 or the 18 version, but then one or two of them were big hitting sherry releases. I think this has just got the balance of sherry influence, but also the sherry influence, but also the Islay characteristic is there in the background, and unmistakably it's an Islay single malt, although it's softer and fruitier and spicier and all the rest. And with that extra age, which it has got, with some of from 14-year-old casks we've put in this up to 9-year-old casks, and although we can't talk too much about that on the label, we like to let everybody know what we've used in this vatting. And to my mind, when I put this together, I was pretty confident that this was, to my mind, was ultimately very good for Loch Gorm, and it's the best release I think we've put out since we started the Loch Gorm releases.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Much as I've loved the Loch Gorm series, there have been a few where it feels like the smoke and the sherry are kind of fighting, whereas these two, it's unmistakably a sherry cask matured whiskey. It's unmistakably an Islay whiskey, but it's in balance and it's showing maturity as well, which is lovely to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're excited because now we've got some older casks in the warehouse, from 10 to, 4, it'll be 15 years of age at the end of this year, and it's great to be able to do a few older releases and showcase, the extra maturity that maybe we haven't been able to do so much with our Mackie Bay and Sannig releases, which are fairly youthful still, but we need to be mindful of not diving in too much to put in too many older casks into those vattings. But it's nice to be able to release something like this every year, which we'll continue to do with Loch Gorm, because I think it works incredibly well. And I'm much more in favour of butts for aging long term than I am hogsheads. I think hogshead can run away with you in terms of sherry influence, although we do use sherry hogsheads for our Sannig releases because it gives that big hit of sherry early on. I think if I'm looking for long-term and balanced maturation, butts work beautifully, and this is proof of it, because these are all butts that we've used, all first fill and 1 or 2 refills that we've used in this.
So just to take that back to basics, the larger sherry butts have less surface to liquid ratio, so it's a slightly slower, in inverted commas, maturation compared to smaller hogsheads, which you find are slightly dominant, I suppose, of the spirit. Is that what you're saying? Yeah,
I think so. I think I would always plump for sherry butts for long-term maturation, because it takes a bit longer, as you say, and I think you get a more balanced, in my view, a much more balanced long-term than you might do in a hogshead. Though hogsheads work beautifully as well. Not saying they don't, but if you had to choose between the two, I'd always plump for a butt. And the butts we buy first fill from Miguel are really excellent. They have huge amount of influence, and I know, sadly, you mentioned at the intro the Fino sherry cask that we've got in the warehouse, and we were going to show that, and someone went,
no, forget about it if we don't talk about it.
But I mean, I think what I would say is it's a completely different animal, and it's great to be able to be able to buy different sherry casks from Miguel, who has all of them. We're going to fill some Manzanilla in the next few months, and we've already filled some Pedro Jimenez casks. And I'm always of the opinion that sherry is king when it comes to the full maturation of your whiskey and how much influence the cask has. And all these releases, actually, the ones we're going to taste now, all showcase something completely different, but with the same spirit that we've used. And I think that's always is going to be, in my opinion, though we as a small distillery can experiment and do all sorts of things out with that at the spirit end, in terms of yeast and barley variety. But, you can taste the spirit and you go, oh, Christ, that's quite different from the spirit I ran last week. But once you put it into cask and let the cask go to work over 5 to 10, 15 years, the influence of the cask is going to take over, and that character that you had at the spirit end is going to narrow right down and be something that's pretty much the same. I'm not saying it's going to be exactly the same, but we're doing all sorts of fun things because people enjoy hearing about other things that you can do in a distillery other than just using the same barley variety and the same yeast variety and doing the same spirit cuts. And we're going to use different peat as well from Islay and from different areas of Islay. And Islay peat, if it's cut in one area, going to be slightly different. I'm not going to say it's completely different, but it'd be fun to see if there is a point of difference with different peat varieties. And I, the provenance of Islay whiskies is definitely in the peat that we use at the malting stage.
Yeah, great. I suppose that comes back a little bit to the unpeated in my mind, in that I really love those drams where you kind of learn a little bit more about either whiskey or the distillery character or something like that. So seeing the unpeated is a bit like seeing Kilchoman without his makeup on, or something along those lines. And if you
Yeah,
tinker with peat or barley varieties or things like that, you have this slightly educational experience that I think lots of whiskey fans enjoy because they're tricking
yeah.
themselves. They're not just getting drunk on delicious booze.
I mean, I think the underlying thing is that every distillery in Scotland and around the world has a characteristic all of its own, and then they can tinker around the outsides, as you say. So you know, you're
Well,
always. I think you'll be the same as when you buy a particular single malt that you're familiar with. It will have that characters you're always looking for, but it might be matured in slightly different casks or you know, that's what I find fun, is that people are now experimenting a lot more than they used to, and it's not just a standard product out there, and everybody's looking to have a marketing twist that will appeal to the consumers around the world.
before I carry on that point, I do love this question from Edward Crimes, who says, what do the Suns do?"
Well, I know, and
Exactly,
exactly.
exactly.
He's only, I think he's bloody joking, but yes, he, I can explain to everybody else because he knows. Yeah,
They do
the
plenty.
boys,
They
the
do
boys have
plenty. They
all
work
come
very
into the
hard.
business at different times. In fact, Peter, youngest son, he joined first, straight from university. Just gave him I said, send him down to London. I said, look, you know, go and call on all the bars and the hotels and see if we can rustle up some interest. And he did that. And then my middle son, James, came into the business, and they're all in the sales and marketing side. So, which actually is exactly what I needed. Young people coming in with up-to-date marketing ideas and sales ideas, and like an old fuddy-duddy like I am, who traipses around the world showcasing Kilchoman in new spirit up to our 3-year-old, and they brought fresh ideas, and it's great to have them in the business because
Yeah, they're great
I
guys.
never imagined they would be in the business with me, and it's great they've all come in and they're all very enthusiastic and passionate about what we do.
Yeah, I think I've met all of them now. Can't tell them apart, but they're all lovely guys. So, coming back to that point, actually, what you said about distillery character, I was thinking about that today. I suppose when around the time when Kilchoman was founded, or when you were dreaming up Kilchoman, I think the way the community thought about distilleries and the way they understood from whiskey experts about how distilleries tasted, it's quite different in that it would be the book was still prominent and a few writers, Michael Jackson, Dave Broom, if you couldn't get those, Jim Murray, and they would have, there was this kind of, their opinion would bring about an understanding that Old Pulteney tasted of salt, it was some Anthony of the North because Michael Jackson said it, and David Broom's discussion of Yamazaki kind of formed how I thought about Yamazaki, etc., etc. Lagavulin, Lapsang Souchong, etc., etc. Are we not ready to kind of say what Kilchoman is and what it tastes like and what those key notes are? That's what I was thinking. What is Kilchoman now? We've got to that point. But then I almost thought afterwards, we kind of don't do that as much anymore. And I think it's the internet now, just there's so many opinions, there's almost no consensus.
Right. Yeah. I think social media in the last 10 or 12 years, maybe about that sort of has taken over, and people can express their opinions online are much more, whereas in the days of Michael Jackson and Jim Murray, it was very much about reading a book and getting their opinions, because they were the experts and who could encourage people to explore single malt, and they'd done it and they tasted loads of single malt. So, but now I think it's very, very different, and social media, I mean, fortunately, social media for a small business like us is a wonderful channel to showcase what we're doing, and we're fortunate. And I think any business starting in the last 15 years or so, it's made a huge difference to the audience you can reach through social media channels. And before that, it was all legwork and going and knocking on doors and encouraging people like Royal Mile Whiskey to take your whiskies, encourage all their staff in the shops to talk about your whiskey and rather than someone else's. And now I think it's the explosion of whiskey clubs and bloggers and people who really do understand this category incredibly well, have helped this explosion of single malt and Scotch whiskey and whiskey from around the world. I mean, it's extraordinary, and spirits in general.
But do you? I know you're spending a lot more time now in the warehouse and putting the bottlings together, and you've tasted it all the way along that journey now. Obviously, are there certain keynotes now that you think that is Kilchoman rather than smoke or peat, or the obvious?
I think I would always say right from the word start, from the beginning. We had this sweet floral spirit, and I remember when we first ran the spirit still, and Jim was there, and Jim Swan just turned to me and said, "Look, if we look after this, we'll be able to release it at a relatively young age." And that was great, because clearly you had to wait 10 years before you released your first single malt. That is a huge resource and a huge amount of money you require to actually take you to that point. So, that was a lot to do with Jim designing and building the distillery and helping me. I just told him I wanted a young, fruity single malt that we could mature relatively quickly, hopefully, and then that the public would be interested in buying some bottles. Would I have dreamt that we'd be where we are today when I first had the idea? No way, because I could look into the future and see what was going on. I saw that was around the edges, there was a huge amount of interest in single malt, and I was an independent bottler, and I could see the surge in interest, and independent bottlers were really gaining a foothold, and I saw that, and I just took the plunge, and people weren't doing it at that time, and I think it's a very risky business to do it. But if I was going to say what are the signature notes of Kilchoman, I would say lemon and citrus and soft, sweet peat. We're not aggressive peat. It's not sort of slam you in the forehead and give you a big hit of what a lot of the single malt, either single malts do have that. We're at the softer end of the spectrum, I believe, and I think that's pay dividends because it's very approachable at a relatively young age. And I always get whatever I'm tasting, unless in the sherry you don't get so much of the lemon and the citrus notes coming through, and that saltiness and the sea spray characteristics which everyone associates with Islay and the sort of peat smoke. We're a different style, and maybe a softer style than some of the others.
You talking about launching the first single malt, that business development, which I've been lucky enough to chat to you, and you sold us a whiskey early doors, and it wasn't a tough sell. I think we've bought everything you could give us at every stage. But I remember an interesting discussion about price when it first started coming out, and what to price it at. And you were one of the first new distilleries to have to price a 3, 4, 5-year-old single malt whiskey. And my memory of it wasn't really based on what it cost to make, because you've not made your money back. There's no way you're making your money back for a long time. And you had that first challenge, and how different the industry is now. And I remember a long discussion about it. And I think I said you were charging too little, actually. But anyway, that doesn't matter. But now you see new releases coming out at 75 quid a bottle, 100 quid a bottle, 110 pounds a bottle. Yeah. It's so different from that big problem you had, and a challenge that you had by going first.
I was always of the opinion, going first like I did. I spoke to a lot of people, mainly in the UK, in the industry, and said, and it was something that kept me up at night, is to deciding what we were going to charge for our first ever release at 3 years of age. And I always felt that you can't go in high, because that's sort of taking the mickey a bit. And I was always the opinion that you should come in at a sensible level. Our first release was 45 quid a bottle, and I remember that the inaugural release was £45 a bottle, 7,000 bottles which were released, and it sat just above the sort of 10-year-old single malt price. So it wasn't cheap, but it wasn't sort of ridiculously expensive. And we've tried to we're in for the long haul, so we need to keep our pricing sensible. But on the other hand, it's not cheap. But as we sort of continued this journey and we get more of a following, I think people are realizing that we're keeping our core expressions at a relatively sensible price, and then some of our older limited releases are a little bit higher. And I think if you're in this for the long haul, you can't go in with your first release, a 3 or 4 year old, at sort of 150, 200 pounds a bottle, and then expect people to come back and buy another bottle or increase your brand awareness, because there's only a limited number of people who are going to pay that sort of price for a relatively young single malt. So that's why we did what we did.
Well, also the thing that's so different now for the new guys coming along, which is a problem but is also an opportunity, is the collectible and traded rare bottle market is so different. It was kind of beginning, it was nascent then, wasn't it? Yeah. And that also rings a bell. You saying, well, I don't care about that. I don't particularly want Kilchoman to be collectible. Am I remembering that wrong?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I did say that. And I think I'm making my whiskey for people to drink. Of course, there are people out there, and there are more and more of them, that are collectors, and we love them to bits. But we do like them to buy a couple of bottles so they can at least try the single malt that they're buying. So, look, I appreciate and understand the collectible and where single malt's going. Having been in the wine trade myself, you know, that market went sky high with Premier Cru and all the Bordeaux's and Burgundies and so on. And, you know, the pricing becomes a bit silly. It's the same in the whiskey industry now. But I suppose the argument is, if people are prepared to pay the price, then the prices are going to carry on going up. But I think the industry has to be very, very careful not to get it completely wrong and try and bleed the market, because some of the pricing that's being fetched for some of these collectibles is pretty eye-watering. Look, I'm in the industry because I like making whiskey, and I like people who enjoy our whiskey. And the only way you enjoy your whiskey is pulling the cork on it and actually drinking with your friends and mates and talking about it. But we know that the single malt whiskey market over the last 15 years is gone crazy in terms of collectibles and Kilchoman. Although we're a relatively new distillery, you know, some of the prices I see rather stagger me, even for Kilchoman, which is relatively young single malt. But you know, we'll see. I mean, I think if we can keep a lid on prices, or certainly not overprice things, I think that's important for the long-term future of Kilchoman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we certainly like your pricing. So a nice, a few questions here from Adam Park. He's the director of Amber Light film that Dave Broom did, the documentary. Oh, yeah. So I'd love to know how you found the location for your distillery. Did you decide to make a single malt first? Was it always going to be Islay? What was the first choice you made?
Yeah, I mean, it was always going to be Islay. I think my wife's family had a house on Islay, and she'd been coming here all her life. So, and also just because of the very few distilleries on a very, very famous island, which was world famous around the world before we built our distillery. And then it was a question of, right, so we chose Islay, and then where's the location, where are we going to put it? And then I came up with the idea, I can't build a distillery like everybody else, because what's the difference? What's going to excite people about another distillery like all the others? So then I came up with the idea that let's take it back to its roots. Let's build it on a farm where we can grow some of the barley and do the whole process on site. Because that's how distilling started in Scotland, you know, small farm distilleries. Certainly here on Islay, there was 35 working farm distilleries at the turn of the century. And that's what we chose. So the location was very much about choosing somewhere where we could grow good malting barley. And I know people sniff about good malting barley on Islay, but you know, we're not the only people who grow barley here on Islay, and Brewer Gladdy grow a lot more than we do for their expressions, and have contracted a number of farmers on Islay, and they grow something like, you know, up to 1,200 tons of barley on Islay. We grow about 250 to 300 tons. And it's a great source of income for farmers here on Islay, because, you know, it's pretty extreme farming over here, and to get another income stream is great. So it's a great thing that Islay has, all these farmers enjoying another income from Bruichladdich mainly, and also we got our own drying facility here on Islay because there's a lot of barley to be grown to be dried down. So yeah, it was basically Islay was the first. There was no argument about where we were going to build the distillery, and I still of the opinion that you can't necessarily plonk a distillery down anywhere in Scotland and expect that everyone's going to come and flock and buy your single malt. I still think that where you build your distillery is quite important, because I think it's important to have that tradition and provenance and heritage of single malt production. And Islay's got it in spade loads, as have several other regions of Scotland. But I'm glad I chose Islay, because there was no doubt that helped us in getting our name spread around the world, maybe a little bit quicker, because all the other distilleries at that time were owned by multinational companies. Bruichladdich was still private at the time, but now only there's another one, obviously Ardnahoa here. So having just 9 distilleries on Islay, there are maybe going to be 1 or 2 more, does help when we're looking for distribution around the world, because all the other ones are owned by the big multinational companies and have got their own distribution networks set up around the world. And if you're looking for a good distribution network in certain major markets, they need an Islay on their portfolio, or would like to have an Islay on the portfolio. So when we came along, we didn't find it too difficult to find partners around the world, because they were looking for an Islay. And fortunately, they liked what we were doing, and we've gone from there.
Great. I think we should probably move on to the Amburach.
Yep.
A very quick question before you take us through that as well, just so people can stick their noses in it for a while. Graham Fraser, question for Anthony. Is Kilchoman still using STR, so shaved, toasted, recharred casks, in maturing its whiskies now the spirit is older?
Yeah, no, we're still using those casks. We did an STR small release last year. It was hugely successful. It gave a completely different character to our whiskey. We got a lot of positive feedback from that. So when it works in different cask types, we're definitely continuing that journey and filling more of them. And it worked well. Actually, shave toast and recharred was something that Jim Swan was very involved with a cooperage in Portugal called Dias, and they came up with this way of treating casks to rejuvenate them, and Jim persuaded me straight away to buy some of these casks. But the one that you're actually trying now is quite fun. Well, it was a cock up. So Amburach in Gaelic is a mess, cock up, balls up, whatever you like to call it. It was and it transpired, and I'm quite happy to be open, because I'm sure it happens in every distillery around the world, when you have 2 vats in your warehouse, because we bottle everything at the distillery. We had 1 vat with Motley ready to go at 46%, which is a core expression, most competitively priced. And in the other vat, we had our first ever port cask matured, fully matured in port cask for only 3 years at 50%. And unfortunately, someone opened up the wrong valve and filled the port into the Motley Bay, and I was actually away at the time, but when I got back, I wasn't a very happy chap, as you can imagine. And you thought, what the hell are we going to do? It's a complete cock up. Anyway, we didn't think about it very much after that. I was in 2014, so the whiskies, Motley Bay and Sanig, were both about 3-4 years of age. So we got them out, put them into refilled bourbon barrels, and just chucked them in the warehouse and forgot about them. And then every year I went back and had a look at them to see how they were coming along, and they weren't really doing very much. And then in 2019, I thought, I think we can do something with these. There's quite a lot of them, but I thought they needed just a little bit of help. So I then decided to take them out of the barrel. So they've had quite a journey. So they come out. So Motley Bay, port cask matured, vatted together into refilled bourbon barrels. And then in 2019, I bought some Ruby Port quarter cask, 100-litre casks, and I then decanted them into these quarter casks to give them just a little bit of more of an oomph, a bit more. They needed just lifting a little bit with a bit of help from some port casks, which I'd worked with before. And the result is this. and this is bottled at 46% because the resulting batting was only at 47.5%, 48%. And so to squeeze a few more bottles, we just reduced it down to 46%. And to me, it has these sort of summer fruits character. It's quite bold. It's quite sort of meaty and bold, but it has this sort of summer fruits character at the back. It's interesting. It actually came together, and I thought, well, it would be fun to just call it Amburg mess and put a release out there. It's only 10,500 bottles worldwide, and it's really just to give everyone an opportunity of trying something that shouldn't have happened. It was a mistake, but if you have the patience to wait and see what happens, and it can come together, and it has come together. It's different, but it's come together, and I enjoy it because I think it's actually got this sort of, and it's a great time to release it because it has got this sort of berry characteristic to it on the nose.
Yeah, like red currant or like some kind of berry jam, and with that meatiness.
But it's Mackie Bay, so it's bourbon sherry, so 90% bourbon, 10% sherry, and then with the port cask influence as well at the time. And we're not sure exactly how much went into each vat, but it came out this very reddish color. So it had obviously quite a lot of port influence. But when it, over 3 or 4 years, it really didn't come together. It was a bit, it was unbalanced. It was dry, it's slightly acidic, and I thought that really wasn't going to work. But actually, everybody says to you that just have patience, leave it, come back to it in another year, and you'll be surprised how it might come together at the end of the day. And I think it has worked, and it's a bit of fun, really. This Amburg is a bit of fun.
Well, it's a long line.
Not to be repeated necessarily.
No, it's a long and noble line of whiskey bottling hall cock-ups, isn't it? That's Ardbeg Serendipity. Hi, Gordon. I don't know if you're watching. He was the chap who did that one.
I think it happens in every. I think bottling halls could tell some quite interesting stories over the years. So yeah. Loads of questions coming in, loads of lovely comments. Can't get to all of them. Annabelle Meikle says hi. Norbert says hi, which is good. There's a geeky barley question. Conor O'Hare, is your barley 2-row or 6-row barley? 6-row.
6-row. Okay, that was quick. Connell Mackenzie, who we both know, was the unpeated Kilchoman from refill casks. Well, a single cask, wasn't it?
A single cask. He obviously wasn't listening.
No, he really wasn't. I'm guessing that's refill cask, wasn't it?
Yeah, he needs to pay more attention. Yeah, refill cask. Yeah.
Okay, good. Nice words from Andreas saying how much he enjoyed the STR. I really loved it. So sad it's gone. I don't think it is quite gone. I think you can pick up bottles. I'm sure I saw some in the warehouse. Anyway, question for Anthony, actually talking about Norbert, who is one of the heroes working away in our warehouse at the moment, and also works up at our shop as well, and the great whiskey expert, Hungarian chap. Question for Anthony: do you sell casks for independent bottlers?
Well, I'll be corrected if I don't say I haven't sold one or two, because
there's a few out there, isn't there? Yeah.
But very few, and so the policy is not. We did sell a cask which appeared in the Elements of Islay once, only one cask. We have sold a few casks to the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, but as a general rule, no, because we do a lot of single casks ourselves, and as an independent bottler myself, I think I don't want to sell them for other people to sell a single cask. I'd rather do that myself. We don't have a huge stock, and we do sell single casks as part of our portfolio to any of our customers around the world who are interested in buying them. So we'd like to look after that side of the business ourselves. Right.
Connell says he was late to the party. I guess he's talking about the tasting, but generally probably.
Well, that's pretty rude, really. He knew it started at 7:30, didn't he?
And Keith Hewitt says Glenmorangie 8020 was a classic mess up. And I think that was also one of Gordon's as well, probably.
Oh, right. Okay. He's been involved in quite a few, hasn't he?
Yeah. So he didn't do a summer shift in your.
Well, I wasn't aware of him being there.
Yeah. And yeah, we got North Star tuning in as well. And Graham Mackay from Morrison Mackay said, I'd love it if you did sell to Indies. I bet he would.
I'm sure he would. Sadly, that is, I mean, we've been asked lots of times if we would, but we've always said no, and we'll stick to our guns on that, because I think it's important to look after, you know, to look after the brand, and we don't need to at the moment, so we don't have to, so we won't be. So bad luck, Connell. I won't be selling any to you.
Very good. What is Dunk? I think Dunk SG said, absolutely love great ex-bourbon Kilchoman. I think it just shows how great their spirit is. Well done, Anthony. Well, I suppose we had the 100% Isla today that was in bourbon. But yeah, I agree with that. It gives room to show and kind of understand that spirit as we're all getting to know it. But I really like your cock up. It's good.
Yeah, no,
it's really
works
good.
really well, and I think it shows what you can achieve, and even if it's a cock up at the time, you can do something with it, hopefully, given time. And so we thought it'd be a bit of tongue in cheek, Amber. I'm sure a lot of people out there know what that means. So we thought it'd be fun to just to do that and call it that.
The Simon Smith, who also works for us actually, will Kilchoman always maintain youthful releases? The temptation must be to embrace the maturity as it comes.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're evolving, and I think any new distillery that starts up is evolving, and you want to take it through to the maturation you believe is where you want it to sit. So yeah, I don't think that Motley and Sannig are where we want them to be, because it's evolving all the time, and we're putting older, mature stock into the vatting, but small chunks because of the stock profile. But now that we've increased production, you know, over the next 3 or 4 years, we'll be able to push the profile of Sannig and Motley, you know, older. And I think personally, you know, Kilchoman, in terms of maturation, is it going to be good at 20, 30, 40 years? Well, you'll find the odd cast might be very good, but I think core expressions and things that work really well. Look, Loch Gormott, you know, that is 9 years officially, if we're allowed to call it, it's 9 years of age. And I think that's beautiful. It's a balanced dram. It's got showcasing all those, you know, all those characteristics that I like. Yes, leave it another 4 or 5, 6, 7 years, but are you going to have those characteristics that you want to showcase your whiskies? Probably not. And it'll be a much softer, rounder character and more influence from the cask it's maturing in. So I think Kilchoman as a dram, you know, once it gets to 8, 9, 10 years of age through to 15, you know, I see that, to me, because I've seen the evolution right the way through, will sit very comfortably with me at that age. And yeah, there will be some older drams out there, but will they be better? They'll be older, there'll be more cask influence, but that's a debate for everybody.
Yeah, well, that was one question I'd written down was, can you predict a peak? What do you think is going to be the peak age for Kilchoman, to your tastes? No?
I think 15, probably. But I don't, you know, we're not there.
The next one you're about to sell.
You know, no. I think, look, we filled some old refills, second, third refills, just to see how far we can take them out. And we'll all be able to take them out a bit further. But if you're asking what has been our maturation profile, it's been mainly first fill, because we want that fruit and character coming through quite quickly, because we've got young single malt. But we have tried to fill some older casks, second and third refills, which will hopefully take those barrels will be taken out a bit further. But overall, I think because we fill mainly into first fill at the moment, you know, between 10 and 15 years is, to my mind, is a great single malt for Kilchoman at that age. Okay,
well, I think we're just about going on to the last dram, but there's so many great comments coming in. Thank you, everyone. Ian Mackay asks, evening gents, great conversation. Question for Anthony. How relevant does he find the regional whiskey festivals for developing and promoting the brand, and can he quantify the feedback from these events into the growth of the brand? How relevant are they? Not very relevant for the next 6 months, I would say.
Not right at the moment in time, seeing as we're supposed to be starting the Whiskey Festival on Isla on Saturday. But look, I think they're a great way of showcasing your brand and your whiskey. And I think that the advent of festivals has been a brilliant way of showcasing any brand, and especially a new distillery's brand. And we've been to many shows, and it's a great way of getting in front of a new audience that maybe not have tried your whiskey. And of course, here on Islay, we have a great festival that's been running for 20, 25, 30 years. And it's a magical week, anybody who's been. Everybody has a showcase day, and everybody does a special release. And no doubt you've heard that we've done our festival release already, because we wanted to get it out there before our virtual open day. And we've done a 12-year-old bourbon, in 11, 12 bourbon barrels, and it got snapped up incredibly quickly. They're very, very popular, these festivals, especially the regional ones. Campbelltown have their own one as well, and Islay has one, Speyside has one, and then there are lots of other festivals. The Whiskey Fringe, we've been going there since we started. I think 14 years, or I think we bought our new spirit when we first started. So it's a great way of showcasing your whiskies.
Yeah, good. Well, thanks for the kind words about Whiskey Fringe. It's going to open the floodgates from people asking if it is going ahead. We don't yet know. We're waiting for a bit more government advice. By the way, thank you, Luke, for all your government updates. I see there's a chap called Luke who works for the government who's actually tasting along today. They've been really helpful. Thank you, Luke. But we can only cancel it once, basically, Whiskey Fringe. And so we're just holding off a little bit for the very small chance it could happen, or we can postpone it. But anyway, we'll come back to that. Shall we talk a little bit about the UK small batch? So this is involving Madeira casks. Yeah,
so small batch is something, my sons came up with the idea of a small batch, and this was about adding a different cask type to the general mix of bourbon and sherry influence, and adding something extra to give it a different dimension. So the UK small batch, which this is, has had Madeira at about sort of 20% Madeira added to the vatting to just give it a different twist. Madeira tends to work pretty well with our spirit character, and it has these bold, sort of strong notes that seem to work very well with our sort of characteristics. And so the small batch is very much about, we've done a Belgium, we've done a France one, we've done a USA one, we've done a German one, and it's about just showcasing and getting another release of Kilchoman into the market, and it's sort of just promotes Kilchoman generally under a different guise. And I think this is at 48.3%, launched in the UK last autumn, and you didn't get a different character on the nose immediately. In some ways it's not similar to the Amburic. It's very different from the Amburic. It doesn't have that sort of summer fruits character at all.
I put kind of sugared almonds, nutmeg or cinnamon. Well,
there's nutmeg, I think there, and cinnamon, and cinnamon is, a little bit of spice on the back of the palate.
Yeah, kind of baking spice, cupboard spice, that kind of thing.
But there is that underlying sort of West Coast character. You've got that saltiness, and you've got that sort of soft, sort of peaty, lingering character on the back of the palate.
So Norbert's back. He asks about your, I don't know how you say this one, Comrade bottlings.
Another marketing idea from the young generation. This is about us being able to promote Kilchoman in a collection of bars around the world, and a special release of the Comrade. Comrade is a term, is sanctuary. So there were stones on either. If you were within the stones around a church, you were in the sanctuary, and you couldn't be thrown in jail and things, and you were protected by the church. And so we just came up with this idea to try and get bars, whiskey bars mainly, in different countries who were interested in taking our full range, so that they would promote our full range. And for their help in promoting Kilchoman, they would get a special bottling, which is called the Comrec. And each year we release a special release just for the Comrec bars around the world. And there are some, I should know, there are a few in Edinburgh. There's 2, I think. And right now, I'm not sure of their names. So I have to get the boys to help on that one.
Yeah, it's not especially relevant at the moment either. I think I feel Balmoral's maybe one of them, but
yeah, I think you might be right. So
and Bobar maybe.
Release is very much. It's not a general release. It's only available through these bars that support the promotion of Kilchoman by having our full range available on their bar.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Lots of comments on the tasting notes of the small batch, which I totally agree with. Salted caramel, toffee, that kind of thing. I was thinking of like a kind of toffee as you cook it. Those kind of flavour notes, which is excellent. We said we'd keep it to an hour. We're pretty much there, which is good. But we got Linda Love saying salted caramel. Few people are going to tune into your Feshile online tasting, so presumably you've sent some packs out for that as well.
Yeah, we've sent 2 lots of packs. We've been doing this. We did it up till the other week, and then for the festival, our open day on the 28th, Thursday 28th, we've sent out 2 lots of packs, core range pack, Maccabee, Sane, Kilchoman, and 100% Islay, which George and Peter, sons, are doing that, and then later on, I'm doing a slightly sort of more geeky tasting where we're doing, we've sown different barley varieties in our fields and they've been in cask for about a year. So we're doing a tasting with different barley varieties, which is very interesting because they are different. They're not mature, but they're different. And then we've also doing we've sent out samples of yeast varieties because it's something else I'm very interested in and excited about, trying different yeast varieties through the process and seeing the different characteristics that come through. And so we're doing that as well. So I've sent a pack of 4 out, and we're doing a tasting on yeast and barley varieties. And we've sent out 1,000 packs, and we sold them all to people, and hopefully they'll be tuning in for that. And then in the evening, we're doing the festival bottling sample as well, which clearly we've sent those out, and people will be able to open their bottle and taste it along with us.
Just, I'm sure you'll talk about this a little bit more, but I haven't got a pack of those, and I don't think I can bear to tune in and watch other people drink delicious whiskey. But so the yeast varieties, and I suppose this question comes to your floor malted barley as well.
Yeah.
Does it feel very different when you're distilling, quite apart from the flavour parts, like in terms of yield and kind of performance in the washbacks and in the stills? Is it very different to kind of work with?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was a steep learning curve when we did our own floor maltings, because you go along to Lefroy and Bowmore and they were hugely helpful, but it's really about your own trial and error and seeing how things work. And we've got better at it each year, and yields are getting much better now, and because we've got it more under control, and we can dry it down a lot better than we used to, and various issues with that. But I think it's a heavier, and there's more. We weren't screening it properly. We weren't looking after it through the system. But now I would say we're almost as efficient with our own maltings as with the malt we buy from Port Ellen, where they're obviously doing it in drums and much more controlled than we are, which is on a floor and the drying of it down. So I would say, and we do it in small batches anyway, we've got a hell of a lot better over 14 years of doing it. And now we're at the situation where our yields, and we talk about yields, everybody talks about yields. Peated variety with the Port Ellen malt, with a heavily peated, it does suppress your yields a little bit. So we're getting between 390 and 400 litres a tonne now, which we're delighted with. Other distilleries further north who don't are unpeated will be getting higher yields, but we're happy with that. And then with our own, it's probably around 385, 390. So we're pretty happy with that as well. And to be honest, is it? Everyone says it must be much more expensive to do your own floor maltings. It isn't, because we do it in small batches. We do not have a full team of malting guys looking just after the malt. The guys who are in the still house look after the malt as well. And doing it in small batches allows us to be able to make it pretty efficient. But the main thing for me was actually showcasing that side of it, and also growing the barley, so that people look upon Kilchoman as a slightly different distillery that can handle all aspects and all parts of the process. To me, that was key in terms of being able to showcase yourselves a little differently from everybody else.
Well, coming back to difficulties to working with it, as a retailer, but also a whiskey fan's perspective, that's reassuring. That's nice to hear. I'm sorry for your troubles, but at the same time, we don't want it to be easy. We want it to be skilled. You guys tell us how whiskey making is a skill. It is a craft. And if you could just pick up this time-honored craft overnight, such as malting, then that would almost be a wee bit disappointing.
I know, and I think it's been a hell of a learning curve. And now, with this new floor that we've got, and definitely with our kiln, the drying is the crucial thing. The drying of your malt is the crucial thing, because if you don't dry it down uniformly, you're going to put it through the mill and you're just going to waste it, because it won't break open the corns. It'll just crush them, and that's a complete waste. So looking after it, and the same guys have been with me for a number of years looking after it, and they're keen to learn, and you're always learning about your maltings. You never stop learning, because it is an art, which is a lost art now in many distilleries, because the industry's gone on in a massive way, and so most distilleries now buy from commercial maltings, quite rightly so.
Mm-hmm. I'll come on to a question from the Pikelet, just to let everyone know. He asks, so when does the mistake come out? The Amberach. Immediately after the end of the tasting, we'll put up a slide that has all the prices, release dates, all that kind of stuff. So the commercial thing, but we're not trying to sell you anything. So authentically Rebecca loved the unpeated, which is interesting. I found that really, really interesting whiskey. Let's see, looking forward to that mistake. Lots of people. Joss Grisel says hi, lovely chap I met up at Glendronach. DB is asking if we sell the unpeated. No, we don't yet, but I would love to look at buying a cask. Alan Wong describes a floral nose similar to Lefroy Highgrove 16 half bottle, which is a great whiskey. So that's an excellent compliment. I think we're about there on the Anthony. Have you had your tea yet? Are you champing to get away?
I'm looking forward to that.
What's on the plate tonight?
Well, I think I'm getting at some sort of pork burgers or something. Handmade pork burgers, I think.
Fantastic.
That's apparently on the menu, so I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, very good. Well, we really appreciate the time and for sending all the drams over. I've really, really enjoyed this little chat, and the whiskies, of course, 4 super drams. And thank you for taking the time and chatting to everyone, and for everyone who's contributed. We'll say goodbye now, Anthony, and
okay.
Thanks
very
again.
much, everybody, and hopefully see you on Ireland in not too distant future.
Yeah, and enjoy the face. In a different way.
We'll try.
Yeah,
great.
Excellent. Okay. Cheers, Anthony.
Okay, bye.
Great. So, as I said, what a lovely man, and really interesting whiskies, and we really appreciate everyone who's tuned in. Loads of people have stuck around as well, and listened to what Anthony had to say. So we really appreciate it. It was really good fun. I really enjoyed it. So as I say, as I say goodbye, I will put up this screen here. I should be able to carry on talking. Yeah. So thanks for watching. These are the 3 bottled whiskies. The unpeated isn't a sellable product as such. And then a release date. So the Amberach, which is the new one, we've got a little bit of the UK small batch coming over of our allocation, then it's away. yeah, but the Amburac is Tuesday. We're going to put that online if anyone's interested in that. And the Loch Gorm is on sale at the moment. We've got a fair bit of stock of that one, which is good. The next thing I just wanted to mention was our next Royal Mile Whiskies online tasting. So this is with Morrison and Mackay, Leanne Moore, and North Star Spirits. So I'm bringing together 3 slightly smaller independent bottlers in an all-star tasting. So they've all picked 2 really amazing drams, some absolute beauties in there. And I'm going to host it as I have tonight. I'm bringing the 3 chaps from these companies, Greg, Graham and Ian, in and out, and we'll have a chat through these 6 drams. So there's going to be another tasting pack we're going to put online also on the 26th of May, actually. Amberac's the 28th. So that's good. I panicked for a moment there. I was on the same day. So Tuesday, 26th of May, 11 a.m. The tasting's happening on the 10th of June. And yeah, details will be on our website. But there's only about 110 packs of those ones, 35 quid, I think, and 6 really interesting drams. So thank you, as I say, for coming along and for supporting Royal Mile Whiskies and Kilchoman Distillery. And we hope you have a lovely rest of the evening. Cheerio.